Alright, so just a couple days ago, we were covering that story of the Israeli army assassinating a Palestinian American journalist named Shireen Abu Akleh as she was attempting to cover one of their raids into Jenin in the occupied West Bank. Now, as if it wasn't enough for them to murder this journalist in cold blood, shoot another one in the back, and then proceed to basically lie about the entire thing, today, this morning, we got word that the Israeli security forces literally attacked the funeral procession for Shireen Abu Akleh that was going on in Jerusalem. So here from the New York Times, which obviously in the video I covered the other day had some absolutely atrocious reporting on this entire event as it was unfolding, but here they got a little bit of a better breakdown, still using some of the propaganda tactics that the US media loves to use. But let's go ahead and read into some of the details here, and then I will show you some of the videos of what this actually looked like on the ground. But they say here, Israeli police attack mourners at Palestinian journalist's funeral. Video shows police officers in Jerusalem beating and kicking mourners next to the coffin of Shireen Abu Akleh, an Al Jazeera reporter who was killed on Wednesday, forcing one to the ground. So they say Israeli police officers on Friday assaulted mourners at the funeral procession of a prominent Palestinian American journalist killed this week in the occupied West Bank, forcing pallbearers to nearly drop the coffin. And video showed police officers in Jerusalem beating and kicking pallbearers carrying the coffin that contained the body of the journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, striking other mourners with batons and forcing one man to the ground. And during the commotion, seems like it was just an assault, not really commotion, but the pallbearers were pushed back, causing them to briefly lose control of one end of the coffin. God, this is just so fucking dark. But the incident happened outside a hospital in East Jerusalem, where mourners had gathered to take the coffin of Mrs. Abu Akleh, who was a Christian, to a nearby church for her funeral. And it was one of several spasms of tension, again, there they go with that wording, during a fraught afternoon as riot police in several locations in East Jerusalem faced off against crowds of mourners waving Palestinian flags and chanting Palestinian slogans. So again, look at the phrasing that they use here in the Western media in the United States. These riot police forces who were using stun grenades and batons and, rubber bullets maybe, all of those weapons, and they're armed to the teeth, and they still portray this as faced off against crowds of mourners, okay? Completely unarmed people who were literally carrying a casket to go through this funeral procession, and they still insist on using this neutral language as if this was a clash. And there were other media outlets that quite literally used the phrasing clash between mourners and Israeli security forces. But they continue saying Israel considers East Jerusalem part of its capital, but it is predominantly populated by Palestinians, and much of the international community considers it to be occupied territory. Now, by much of the international community, they basically mean every country on the face of the earth outside of the United States and Israel. But they continue saying the incident at the funeral procession lasted roughly a minute and followed a tense standoff between paramilitary police and mourners, in which at least one empty plastic bottle was thrown in the direction of police. Let me just read that again, okay? The incident at the funeral procession lasted for roughly a minute and followed a tense standoff between paramilitary police and mourners, in which one empty plastic water bottle was thrown in the general direction of police, okay? Again, even just bringing this up as if this is any justification whatsoever for the actions that were then taken by the Israeli security forces is just absolutely wild to me. But literally talking about an empty plastic bottle as if that is somehow, able to be equated with tear gas and stun grenades being thrown by the riot police. But they continue saying the police then suddenly advanced on the coffin, swinging batons and aiming kicks at mourners as the police advanced mourners through projectiles, including what appeared to be a stick, and officers threw what appeared to be stun and smoke grenades. Again, using this weird language here, but in a statement, the Israeli police said they took enforcement action after some mourners began chanting nationalist incitement, okay? And after officers had given the crowd a warning. A warning for what? I mean, again, as the coffin was carried out of the hospital, police said they were forced to act because rioters began throwing stones towards the policemen. Do they have any evidence for this? Well, they say the police later distributed video showing an empty plastic water bottle, again, one of the most deadly weapons known to humanity, an empty plastic water bottle, and two other bottle-shaped objects being thrown in the direction of officers in the moments before they advance on the pallbearers, and separate undated video shows several stones on the ground. Okay, again, so what? They provided evidence that there were multiple empty water bottles that were thrown at police, and they provided a video that didn't have a date on it that showed stones on the ground and didn't even have the evidence that people were throwing stones. Not that that would have justified these actions whatsoever, but again, of course, choosing to throw that in here as if it has any relevance whatsoever to the actions that were taken by Israel. But they say there was no clear indication of when or how the stones had reached that spot. Again, completely ridiculous to include that and pretend as if this is journalism, but they continue here finally with even more ridiculous context for us. They say on Thursday, Israeli police warned Miss Abu Akleh's family about displaying flags and slogans at the funeral, said Ahmad Tibi, a Palestinian member of the Knesset, Israel's parliament. So they told them, you are not allowed to bring Palestinian flags, which is going to tie back because the Israeli security forces were literally trying to rip the Palestinian flag off of her own coffin. Okay, so they told him, you're not allowed to bring flags and you're not allowed to chant slogans. Okay, tell me that this is not a fascist country. Tell me that this is not an apartheid where Palestinians are not even allowed to enter East Jerusalem, which is, according to the international community, not even belonging to Israel. And they're not even allowed to peacefully bring one of their own people who has just been assassinated by Israeli security forces without having those same security forces come and brutally attack them for carrying flags and chanting slogans. Okay, and maybe throwing a couple empty plastic water bottles. Just completely egregious. But finally, they finish here saying, at one point during the funeral, a man holding up a wreath stood between pallbearers and police, and later, as the black hearse carrying her coffin began to slowly make its way through the crowd, an Israeli police officer ripped 3 Palestinian flags off the vehicle and threw them to the ground, video showed. So again, this isn't about a security issue for Israel. This is about them continuing in this ongoing apartheid and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people. That's as simple as it is. Of course, you would not, if this was a security issue, you wouldn't be going in there to rip Palestinian flags away from them. You wouldn't be going to the house of the family of Shireen Abu Akleh, as Israeli security forces did, and telling them that they're not allowed to display flags and to play Palestinian music. Okay, that's, it's completely ridiculous that anybody has any both sides interpretation of what is unfolding right in front of our eyes right now. But just to give you a video perspective on this, here from Al Jazeera, they say the Israeli army is asking people if they are Christian or Muslim, and if they say you're Muslim, you weren't allowed in. So here we go with a couple video examples of what it looked like on the ground.
I've looked at news throughout the world for decades, and I've never seen a scene like this. Look at that. Attacking innocent people, carrying a casket. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say anymore. What are they expecting now? This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Oh my God. Such disrespect for the dead and for those who are mourning the dead. How is that a security threat to anyone? How is that disorderly? Why does that require this kind of repression, this kind of violence on the part of Israelis?
All right, so listen, he was exactly right. I'm going to show one more video here of a slow motion version of what it looked like on the ground. You can see them directly beating and abusing people who are very clearly unarmed and who are literally having their hands trying to keep up this coffin from falling onto the ground. So we're going to watch this video, but again, that commentator in that Al Jazeera one was exactly right. What the fuck do you even say about this? This is, again, pretty low, even from the standards of what the IDF and what Israeli security forces do on a daily basis. This is just completely disgusting. All right, so gonna go ahead and stop it there. I mean, obviously, it's kind of hard to watch because, again, what the fuck are you even supposed to say about this? I mean, it's completely egregious. This is the Israeli security forces who just assassinated this journalist, knowingly assassinated them. We know that it was an Israeli sniper. We know that according to the official government line from the state of Israel, where they're saying, oh, it's up in the air, maybe it could have been Palestinian resistance fighters who ended up delivering the fatal shot. No, that's entirely bullshit according to all of the eyewitness testimony that we have on the ground that say that there were no Palestinian fighters within the region that these journalists were located, that they clearly had press written on their flak jackets, written on their helmets, that they had tried to make themselves apparent to these Israeli forces that were in the region, and that it was an Israeli sniper who fired the shots that hit the one journalist al-Samudi in the back and then ended up shooting Shireen Abu Akleh in the face, killing her. So these same forces that then just assassinated this journalist and shot another one in the back are now turning around and won't even allow them a peaceful, a peaceful walk to the church to go and conduct her funeral. I mean, I couldn't even come up with more disgusting examples of exactly what apartheid and ethnic cleansing looks like. But the state of Israel is just apparently willing to openly do this at this point with complete impunity from the global community, but especially from their largest supporter here in the United States. So just to give you a perspective in terms of what the Joe Biden administration has been saying on this, they of course are using completely neutral language while also condemning the killing in general terms. So here from the official State Department spokesperson Ned Price, an absolute ghoul, he says, "We are heartbroken by and strongly condemn the killing of American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh in the West Bank." Again, you're condemning it, but you're not condemning the people who actually killed her. And they say the investigation must be immediate and thorough, and those responsible must be held accountable. Her death is an affront to media freedom everywhere. So yeah, it is an affront, and it's an affront that was conducted by Israeli security forces. And listen, when he is calling for the investigation, okay, what he's calling for is for the IDF to be given permission to conduct this investigation unilaterally, okay, so they can come to the conclusion that they themselves are not at fault. I mean, just to show you how completely ridiculous this is, in an analogous way, think about the Western media or a State Department spokesperson ever coming out during the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and let's say a Ukrainian journalist had just been shot by invading Russian forces. Could you ever fucking imagine the US media or the US government coming out and saying, well, we can't make the conclusion that Russia is responsible for this, we need to wait for an investigation that involves Vladimir Putin and his representatives to conduct a free and fair investigation into what happened? They would fucking never do that, okay? They would assume by default that, of course, if the evidence on the ground is showing that it is clearly Russian forces responsible for this, as it is showing in this instance that Israeli forces are responsible for this, they would have absolutely no hesitation, no problem whatsoever with coming out and condemning it. But somehow, when it's the state of Israel, when it's one of our closest allies and ally that we dump $3.8 billion in military assistance every single year for them to continue this apartheid and ethnic cleansing, when it comes to them, there's just this rampant neutral language and inability to actually hold anybody accountable, or even an inability to apply, necessary standards for the aid that we are giving them, the military assistance that we are giving them. It is somehow a controversial opinion in the United States government, or even in the United States generally, to say that we shouldn't be giving military support to an apartheid state that is doing shit like this, assassinating journalists and attacking peaceful people as they are trying to mourn the loss of one of the best and most, well-renowned veteran reporters that has been covering the crimes of Israel for years now. So completely egregious, obviously, but still, unfortunately, doesn't seem like there's going to be much accountability, definitely not from the United States. Merely even a condemnation is somehow too much to ask for from the Biden administration, but this is what the state of Israel is, this is what they are continuing to do, and the apartheid and ethnic cleansing is not slowing down.